Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by Joe Fordyce, our Flyers pre and post game live producer. Joe, 4 games into the Rick Tocchet era for the Flyers. They are 1-2-1. And I think a pretty interesting storyline that's building is the picture in net. And the new guy, Dan Vladar, playing pretty well in 2 starts. And he got the season opener and the home opener. Joe, are we seeing Vladar maybe start to take over the number one responsibilities? Could this be the guy that the Flyers lean on a little more maybe than Samuel Ersson?
You know, we're no stranger to goalie issues here, so I think everybody's hypersensitive to a potential goalie issue. I'm not sure this is an issue, so I'll put that right out there. But it did get, you picture a dog with their ears going up. As soon as you hear Vladar starts the season opener, and then definitely when you hear he starts the home opener, and then listen, you and I had this conversation a lot during last season. If you take out the individual assessment of every goal and you just look at opponent shots and goals that go in, last night was one of those games where it's just not good enough. It just isn't. There's no circumstance where it's good enough to win a game. And when you put all those things together, I think we are seeing Dan Vladar be the guy that they can rely on more so, and that they will lean on more so. And Rick Tocchet's already shown by the significant games which he started him in, being the opener and the home opener, that he's willing to do that. And there's not necessarily a goalie 1 and goalie 2 that they're kind of maybe both 1As, or the guy that we thought was the 1A is actually the 1. And that is a thing that could fluctuate throughout the season. I just really think when you watch Vladar play the games he's played this year, you're seeing a confident guy in net, a guy that the guys in front of him think is going to make the stop when he can see the puck. And I don't know. It just seems everything about it right now seems different when Dan Vladar's in the net. So I think it's definitely, we've heard both guys. We heard Dan Vladar say he didn't come here to be a backup. And then we heard Sam Ersson say that Dan Vladar didn't come here to be a backup. So I think each guy acknowledges what the deal is here. Unfortunately for Ersson, this is a huge year for him with it being a contract year. But, that is not really the concern of Rick Tocchet. It's not the concern of the defenseman playing in front of the goaltender. The idea is to have the goalie that gives them the best chance to win play. And right now, it's a small sample size, but that is Dan Vladar right now.
I wasn't all that surprised when Vladar got the season opener in net, because Danny Briere said on July 1 when they signed Vladar that this guy could be their number 1, that he would compete to be their number 1, that Briere said he challenged the goalies at the end of last season and said it wasn't good enough. He was going to bring in outside help, and everyone needed to be ready to compete. So that told me they were going to do this on merit in camp, and Vladar had the better preseason. So I wasn't all that surprised there. And I really got the sense early on, the way they went back and forth with Vladar a game, Ersson a game, Vladar a game, Ersson a game, that it would kind of come down to which goalie blinked first. And if a goalie had somewhat of a clunker, then the next goalie would get their chance. And if they play well, they could get consecutive starts. And I wonder if that's the opportunity Vladar's facing now. Ersson gave up 4 goals on 14 shots last night in that loss to Winnipeg on Thursday night. Vladar's going to get another opportunity, I would think, on Saturday. And if he plays well, Joe, I think he could start to take some starts here. But overall, I'm with you. It's not a goalie controversy. I think it's a good problem. They have more goaltending this year. A guy that can actually spell Ersson, can compete with Ersson, and give them some starts when Ersson's not in net. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what's gone on the past year and a half, it's kind of been like, well, who's worse? They're not talking about that this year. That's a good thing. That's why I'm not considering it a controversy. But what is happening is, you know, when I say everyone, I'm not talking about the media, but when I think when they bought Dan Vladar in, the casual fan, or maybe the even more than casual fan, looks and says, okay, here's a guy, hasn't started more than 30 games in his career in a season. He's coming in to be the backup. And you kind of just, okay, Danny Briere says this guy could be our starter. And it's kind of gets almost blown off like, well, what's he going to say about this guy? You know, you're bringing a guy in, you're not going to say, well, he's here to be, play 15 games or 20 games. That's not, no GM is going to say that about a goalie they're bringing in. But now when you watch them play, you start to think, okay, does Dan Vladar have another level? I mean, he was in Calgary protecting a big-time prospect in Dustin Wolf. So they knew that Dustin Wolf was their future already. So it's not like they were looking for that other level from Dan Vladar, because they had it was kind of like when the Flyers, before Carter Hart came up, it was kind of like, yeah, but Carter Hart, and there it's like, okay, well, we have Dustin Wolf. Like, we know what we're looking at down the road here. It kind of makes the Vladar expendable. When Vladar comes to a team that's had the goaltending issues like they've had in the past couple of years, the Flyers had, all of a sudden it's like, hey, maybe he can reach another level. And I think we're seeing that right now. Again, really small sample size, but he is clearly the goaltender that's playing better hockey right now.
Yeah, certainly a small sample size, but in two starts, he's given up just 2 goals, and that was both against the two-time defending champs, and just looks really sound in net. He's big, he's athletic, he makes the obvious save, but he can make the highlight reel one too. He just looks like he tracks the puck. I think we saw that being an issue last year with Fedotov and Kolosov. Pucks from the point, pucks from deep through traffic. Like, they really had a tough time seeing. Vladar seems like he really knows how to get in position, see the puck, and stop it. And it's refreshing.
Yeah, and you know what else is interesting about it too? He's confident when he plays the puck. Mm-hmm. I think there's been some issues with that recently. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I'll point out is, in one of those Florida games, he has to go toe-to-toe with Sergei Bobrovsky. And he does. They didn't win the game, but they played well. And then when you look at last night, Sam Ersson has to go toe-to-toe with Connor Hellebuck. And it just, Hellebuck made the big saves. And I think Ersson would tell you, and did really tell you last night after the game, that he didn't. So that ability to match some of the best goalies in the game, that's not really something that can be understated too, because we saw big deficits in that last year. The Rangers had a down year, but you go into a game and you're facing a Shesterkin, or you're facing a Hellebuck, you're facing a Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky. You need a guy that you think, at least for a night, can go toe-to-toe with that goalie and kind of match them almost save for save. Ersson didn't do that. We've seen Vladar do it once in the 4 games so far.
And I wouldn't write off Samuel Ersson, as you mentioned, Joe. This is a small sample size. This is 4 games into the season. But what I think we're seeing is that right now there's a healthy competition, and that's not a bad thing for the Flyers, who have been really plagued by goaltending issues really in their history, but also more importantly in their recent history as they're trying to rebuild this team. Joe, another really interesting storyline to start the season was Matvei Michkov getting off to a bit of a slow start. He didn't have a point through 3 games. He got a goal kind of in garbage time last night, late in the 3rd period, when the Flyers were already down 4-1. But that was big, I think, for him, just to get a point and kind of get the scoreless stretch for him kind of in the back of his head, or out of his head, I should say. What have you thought of Matvei Michkov so far, Joe? And Rick Tocchet's comments about Michkov needing to know when to start to shoot up ice for a play and when to hang in there to play some defense.
Yeah. First off, I think it's good to get on the score sheet. A goal scorer needs to score goals, and it doesn't matter if he scores them in, I guess you consider last night kind of garbage time, but it's, I'm going to use the Scott Hartnell saying, it's the Cookie Monster. Like, the Cookie Monster needs to be fed. And last night he got a cookie. So not suggesting that it was a tap-in goal. I'm just saying a cookie meaning a goal. So, and it was a good, skilled shot last night. And it's no slouching goal that he beat on the goal. Just the time of the game, and it seemed like it was kind of a foregone conclusion, the result when he scored that. But it was a goal nevertheless. And I think that's huge for a goal scorer and a guy that you want to be one of your top goal scorers. I mean, quite frankly, that's the reason he's here. So I think that was big. What you don't like to see is some of the stuff that went on in the previous games. And I use one example, and I believe he didn't play after this point in that second game against Florida, the one that was in Philadelphia. He kind of in center ice appears to not, he takes kind of a lazy flyby penalty, like stick penalty in center ice, nowhere near the goal. And it puts Florida on the power play that ties the game at 3. They scored to tie the game at 3. And I don't believe Michkov saw the ice in the game after that. And it really wasn't your obvious John Tortorella style benching, but we didn't see him out there. And you hear Tocchet mention stick penalties and freebie goals and things like that. And I think that is the example that's happened so far in the 4 games, is that particular one there. You're not in a danger zone. You just kind of give up on skating in center ice and just take a flyby penalty with your stick out, and you put your team at a disadvantage and quite frankly cost them a lead at that point in time. And I think that's where the questions about his conditioning and sort of the ankle issue that he supposedly that he dealt with in the off season that affected his workouts and so forth. That's where that sort of stuff arises. And what the Flyers need is they need him to score more goals and have all this talk stop about how he looks on the ice. I think last night was a step in that direction, at least, despite the time when the goal came.
And I like the way Rick Tocchet's handling it. He's not going to healthy scratch him. Maybe he'll trim some ice time here and there. The time when he sat during the game, I think he was really shortening his bench and just going with guys that I think were playing well that night and a little more reliable. And as we all know, Matvei Michkov thinks offense. Defense can be sometimes an issue. So I didn't really have a huge issue with that. They won the game too.
Yeah. And I would say the way the power play looks with him playing, we talked about in the offseason, one of the things I thought last year that I really didn't like was that the power play, they would have Konechny and Michkov playing with their sticks to the boards. This year, you have Michkov opening up on the power play, ready for that one-timer, playing down low near the goal line. We saw work last night with a little, triangle passing with Konechny kind of as the bumper in the middle in the power play. And I like all that stuff for sure. What you just mentioned about shortening the bench, I go back to the overtime where Michkov didn't see any time, and Rick Tocchet said that he was playing the guys that he thought was going to skate, or we're going to skate, and that is what started all this. That particular comment there, and I think what you're seeing is, look, nobody's going to go out there and say that Matvei Michkov is, nobody's going to mistake him for Kyle Connor skating, watching last night's game. So maybe that turned into a story that was a little more of, hey, like, there's a lot of space, and you have to pick and choose your spots when Michkov's going to play on a 3-on-3, because you get stuck a little bit when you have guys that aren't as fleet of foot as some of the guys you're playing against. So I, it's been an up and down, but I think it's being handled well, and it's not really turning into a controversy. There's questions, but it's not turning into a controversy. And I think the goal last night can only go, into helping that situation.
I do too. I think he's a guy that when he sees the puck go into the net, it fuels him and it can lead to more. And I thought to myself, man, if there's a silver lining to this game, a game that was very much a clunker, not a good game for the Flyers, just wasn't much happening, period. If there was a silver lining, it was Michkov scoring and him seeing the puck go into the net. But Joe, I agree. I just don't think this is a huge deal. I think the whole out of shape thing is not nonsense, but it's really been blown out of proportion, because the funny thing is no one was saying he was in poor shape when he had 4 points in 4 preseason games and was playing over 19 and a half minutes a game. Like, he looked pretty good then. He didn't look out of shape then. Even in camp, there was a day where they had some fitness skating, and Rick Tocchet in a press conference praised Michkov for leading his group, taking 3 hard laps and being the first to finish, and said that was a huge thing for him in his eyes. So it happens when Tocchet says, I was looking for a guy that needed to skate in overtime, and it wasn't Michkov. And suddenly that gets people's ears, and people think, well, maybe he's out of shape. But we did learn that he had a bit of an ankle issue in the summer. That probably limited his training. So I think it's more about Michkov getting into playing form and not so much shape, fitness-wise. I think he looks fine there. So a goal, I think, will be big for him. And listen, he's always going to drift a little bit. I remember Brad Shaw, toward the end of last season, said, you could ask the coach 10 years from now here in Philadelphia, and he's probably still going to see a little bit of drift in his game, because that's Matvei Michkov. He is an offensive player. The great offensive players anticipate offense going up the ice. So they're playing on the move, and they're looking to get that breakaway or that 2-on-1 or that 3-on-2. It's more time and place. And I think that's what Rick Tocchet's looking for, is if there's a smart time to do that and you can read it well, do it. But if we're protecting a lead, or we're really hemmed in our own zone and we really need people to buy in defensively, we need you to play defense. And I think Michkov is going to commit there. It sounds like he's willing to do that. I don't get the sense that he's an issue at all in terms of his personality or wanting the team to win or not. So I see this being a no big deal, and I think Michkov is going to start scoring, and we're really not going to remember this.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I mean. Like, I think, if he comes out and has a goal in 3 straight games, or let's say he has, 4 points over the next 2-3 games, I don't think anybody's going to be talking about out of shape and things like that. It's going to be, okay, let's, move on to another storyline. This one's over, type of thing. And that's the best thing the Flyers could ask for.
Joe, we've seen some movement on the back end so far, and I think a lot of us maybe saw that coming. It looked like their depth was going to be hit a little bit. No Rasmus Ristolainen to start the season. No Cam York to start the season, but York did return on Thursday night against the Jets, so that was a good sign for the Flyers. But Emil Andre came up for a game, then he went back down. Dennis Gilbert was here as an extra, then he went down. It looks like Igor Zamula could be in and out of the lineup. He played in the season opener, but he's been out of the lineup the last couple of games. Did you see this coming, Joe? A lot of movement on defense, where I think the Flyers are looking for answers, and that their depth was going to be somewhat of a concern.
Yeah, I mean, the York injury you start kind of behind the 8 ball, but we talked about this heading into the season prior to the York injury, is that their depth was a concern. And quite frankly, they have a lot of guys that haven't really proven anything in terms of solidifying a spot in a defense core in the NHL. And we're speaking of the guys like Andre, the Gilberts, I think we all think Drysdale's an NHL defenseman, but his role and his contract status he has a lot to prove still. And even with the difference in philosophies, with the whole let the goalie see the puck kind of thing, Nick Seeler's role even kind of has changed a little, because he was so heavy on the blocking shots among the league leaders, and blocking shots is not as much of an emphasis now. So, I'm sure there's been some adjustments in his game. With York back in the fold, that top pair becomes solidified. But I think we're going to really have a sort of revolving door with the remaining 4 defensemen. Sealer will be there. Where he'll play, who he'll play with, I think is going to change. I think Drysdale will be there. Health, assuming health, he's there. But I think you're going to see a lot of change, and it might be that, one combination is a perfect mix for 2-3 weeks, and then it changes. Or it might be this combination didn't work, and it changes from game to game. I think it's definitely going to be a revolving door. And quite frankly, that's just part of being in a rebuild type of situation the Flyers are in. You're really trying to find what you have. And we talked about that in the offseason. And I think the York injury kind of just overexposed that fact for the first 3 games.
Yeah, you could argue half the defense really isn't set. Noah Jolson, I think, is still competing for games. Igor Zamola, of course, is competing for games. He's trying to get back in the lineup. And then you even think of Adam Yinning. I think he's very much almost in somewhat of a competition with Emil Andre. For if his play drops, maybe they'll look to Emil Andre and they'll go a little smaller, but they'll go with more puck moving. I think some people were upset that Andre got sent back down. He played pretty well in limited minutes in the home opener, and the team won. And then he goes back down because Cam York comes back. I would have had a big issue with it if it wasn't so early in the season. That I think they really like Andre. It just so happened that he's the only one that's waivers exempt. And I just think so early in the season, they don't want to lose a guy on waivers and really go through that. So for now, it was Emil, go back to Lehigh Valley, play a ton of minutes, and your time will come. But that's something I think worth keeping an eye on, Joe, is how well will Emil Andre play down there? Could he force their hand? And will the Flyers eventually have to keep this kid up here?
Yeah, and I mean, it's no coincidence that you kind of send him down and he doesn't play Winnipeg. I mean, Winnipeg has big, fast forwards that we've talked about Andre being undersized. And, the physicality of that Winnipeg team, you don't want to overload yourself with undersized guys, especially on the back end. So, if he's going to miss a game, I think Winnipeg is fine. And, it's going to be a revolving door. I get the sense it won't be too long before we see Andre back with the Flyers again.
Yeah, and I think fans would like that because whenever he's up here, he just seems to open your eyes, and you can tell why he had the pedigree that he did coming up. 2nd-round pick, a star on the World Junior team in Sweden, and a guy that's really been great down at the AHL level. Like, he is really accomplished, and he's really aced every level that he's played in, the SHL, the AHL, Sweden World Juniors. And when he comes up here, he's done some good things. So I think some fans would like to see him come back, but I think it's early and I wouldn't worry about it too much right now. I think the good thing is the Flyers do still really like his future. And I just don't, as we mentioned on our previous podcast, they should not give up on him. And I don't get the sense they are right now. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think Andre's status with the team is in any sort of doubt with the team. Yeah. I think it's kind of, social media doesn't really react to things in a rational way a lot of times. I'm not sure if you're aware. So I think it's one of those things and not necessarily anything that's going on within the team. I think they all know what they think of Andre's game.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, a little bit of a numbers game right now for the Flyers. And part of that's the picture on defense being a little uncertain, a little unstable. And the Flyers obviously knew that going into the season that this would be an area that they would have to watch closely. And I think a lot of fans are too. Well, Joe, 4 games into this season, it's been fun watching the Rick Tocchet Flyers. And we'll see this schedule continues to really be a tough one for the Flyers. They've got the Wild now on Saturday, a game on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Joe, you will have pre- and post-game live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks so much, as always, Joe. A huge thank you to Spencer McKercher and Tom Feiner for helping us out here on the Flyers Talk podcast. Big thank you to you guys. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you so much for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, please rate and listen. And we can't wait to talk to you next time.